recording this. And then let me go into share screens. Hold on one second. Where are we? There we are. Okay. Just trying to share the screen. There we go. Okay, great. Let's thank you for that. And let's pray in. Let me start the space and okay. Let's take 3 cleansing breaths together. And so how good it is to surrender into this moment right here, right now, knowing that there is only one life, one God, one source, one creator of all things. We call that creator mother, creative force that lives and abides within us and around us and everything and always. How good it is to be one, to know that there is one life, one mind, one source, and that source is the goddess. She's everywhere present. She is the magnetic force of the universe. She is the place where life comes into manifestation, where all things are activated into beingness. And so I know that I am one with this force, that it is within me, that it abides in every cell, every fiber of my beingness. And as I know this for myself, I know this for everyone here in the class and everyone who is listening to this video at a later time, throughout time, that right where you are, the goddess force is. She abides in your mind, in your heart, in your cells. She is the activating force of life. Every thought that you think, every feeling that you have, she is present within that, saying yes to you at the deeper level, at the conscious level, at the emotional level, and at the spiritual level. She is the reason that you can create your life, that you can create all things. The creative force everywhere present. And so I call forth our ancestors, our spirit guides. I trust and I know that we are guided and directed in this work and in this journey, the journey into ourselves, into our hearts, giving thanks for the mind that knows the way and the heart that is the way. In pure gratitude, I am so honored for the sacred connection that we have together called Finding Our Mothers. And in gratitude and love, I let it be, saying Ashe. So good evening. Good evening. I'm so happy to be here tonight. And thank you all for being here. And so tonight, my intention is to really focus our energies on what it is we're calling forth for ourselves. And I want to recognize and honor that, that we are in a 30-day container. And as we are changing direction, in the last class, we started changing direction to what it is that we want to really get from this class at the end. I also want to acknowledge that this might be some of our first time doing this work. And so you might not feel completely ready to change directions yet. You might still need some time to do clearing. You might still need some time to explore why things are the way they are, why you feel the way you feel, what it means to consider a new perception and a new identity around your mother. You might not be completely ready yet. And I just want to say that that's okay. That's okay. And that there's no right time in this, and there's no wrong way, and there's no right way. It's just what it is. And so honor that. And in that, I am committed to bringing forth all the information so that when you are ready, you have it at your fingertips. So that you don't have to, you might be ready 3 months from now. And 3 months from now, you get to come back and go, okay, I remember we had another class. And so, so today I wanted to definitely do some checking in, but I first wanted to also talk a little bit about the Great Cosmic Mother. I don't know if you know this book. I don't know if you can see it. It's The Great Cosmic Mother. And I love this book. If anybody comes in my house and they ask to look at it, they have to give me their driver's license first. I covered it that much. It's like, don't touch my book unless I know that you are going to give me something that matters to you. And so I wanted to read just one little paragraph from this book and then go into talking about, what it means to, when, after this chapter, after I read this paragraph, we can talk about basically what it says here. So this is called The First Sex. In the beginning, we were all created female. That's the title of this chapter. In the beginning was a very female sea. For 2.5 billion years on Earth, all life forms floated in the womb-like environment of the planetary ocean, nourished and protected by its fluid chemicals, rocked by the lunar tidal rhythms. Charles Darwin believed that the menstrual cycle originated here, organically echoing the moon pulse of the sea. And because this longest period of life's time on Earth was dominated by marine forms reproducing parthenologically, he concluded that the female principle was primordial. In the beginning, life did not gestate within the body of any creature, but within the ocean womb containing all organic life. There were no specialized sex organs, rather a generalized female existence reproduced itself within the female body of the sea. So basically, this is saying that there was only one gender initially, and that was female, and that was it. And the female laid eggs into the ocean, and that acted as a womb, as a womb, and the eggs hatched, and women the female just recreated upon itself. And so I remember the first time I heard this information, it just, like, I couldn't, it's a lot, is what I'll say. It was a lot to take on. It was a lot to really even allow myself to think about, like, what it would mean that everything in the beginning was female. And then I remember biology, and, you know, when we were young and in biology, and they said that, you know, when life is conceived at the very beginning, everything is female at the beginning before it takes on a sex. I think like maybe 6 weeks in, then you're determined whether you're a girl or boy. I remember when I was pregnant, they would say, like, we can't do the test to see if your child is a girl or boy, you know, for several weeks or for a couple of months or something like that. And the thing about that is fascinating to me is we live in such a patriarchal system that there is no place for a conversation that includes the early beginnings of humanity, and that initially was all female. And because we don't tell the stories accurately, it puts us in a position where we automatically are experiencing a deep sense inside of ourselves of lack, and like we don't belong. Like, at least that's how I experience it. It's like it creates this experience of what I like to call it's upside down. So we put men at the top, where God is a man, and the God that becomes a man and becomes a God is also a man. And that there is no space in our conversations, in our psyche, in our education, in our families, in our religions, in our culture, that includes where woman is in that. And because of that, it begins to slowly disintegrate the natural order of things and the truth of our own power and the position that we hold in this thing called life. And it's so damaging because we are the creators of all. We are the creators of everything. And no, we're not the creators alone, but we are the creators. And so when we are not given any position at the foundational level in conversation, in sacred ceremony, in our cultural identity, in our religions, in our systems and power structures, when you cannot see yourself, when you cannot look out and identify and see yourself, then automatically you begin internally to subjugate yourself, to feel less than, to feel lacking. And so that is ultimately what I want us to start moving to undo that in it. It's one thing at one level to undo it around, you know, how we experience it with our mothers. But when you can consider, you know, that our mothers and our mothers' mothers and all grew up for centuries in environments that totally excluded the feminine, that totally oppressed us in every way possible, and not only oppressed us but killed us, and, you know, wiped us away from history, and basically made us property of, you know, of our male counterparts. And so what that does to the psyche is what we are experiencing now. Like, and the reality is that it's absolutely not the truth on any level. Like, it's like we truly are living a lie. The way we hold it in our minds, the way we've been taught it, the way we practice it in religion and faith on a general level is actually a lie. There's just no truth in it. And so, you know, you think about how that lands inside of you and how that shows up. You know, it's like, how could our mothers be any different than they were when we live in a system that says to be a man is the position of power. To be active and working and making money and out in the world is the position of power. And when you believe that and live that and have that be a part of your expression, how could our mothers be any different than they were? How could it be that they could reject the structures that they were indoctrinated in to be anything different than disempowered and disconnected and, hyper masculine and always working and sort of depressed or outside of their power? How could we expect them to be different? And so based upon that understanding, which also culminates all the information that we've gotten to this point, I really want us to start to consider, what it means for ourselves to take on, to consider, to be in contemplation for ourselves as women and men who are listening, this true identity of the feminine, the true identity of the mother. As a person who studies astrology, one of the things that I love that I don't talk much about, but in astrology, there's this thing they call the galactic center, and it's at 26 degrees of Sagittarius. And the galactic center is considered the womb of our universe. And nobody talks about it. It's rare that it's discussed. And cosmology is what they call it. In cosmology, there is a belief that this is where souls travel from before they implant themselves in our uteruses at the time of pregnancy, that they come from the galactic center. Now, I don't know that that's true or not, but I do know that the conversation around the feminine, around the womb, around birthing is a huge conversation in our universe. Our earth is considered feminine. Our earth is feminine. And what you plant in the earth, if like the way you would plant a seed in a womb, what you plant in the earth then delivers a result. If you put an oak tree, if you plant an acorn in the ground, the earth, because it's feminine in its nature, will produce an oak tree. That is who we are by nature. And yet that is excluded from any major religion, from our educational system. When we're talking about power and power structures, it's excluded from everything that we do. It's excluded even in our family structures often. Just this idea, like when you talk to women and you ask them, what did your mother teach you about the reproductive system? Many women, at least many women my age, will say, my mother didn't tell me anything about reproduction. Why? Because her mother didn't tell her anything about reproduction. When we live in a universe that is only reproducing all the time. So like if we can understand how out of touch we are just in our conversation, in our education, in our ability to understand what it means to be feminine and what it means to embody this experience, the spiritual experience of mother, because truly that just means that we are creators. It means that we are creators, and our entire universe is a creative force. Our earth is a creative force. We in and of ourselves are creative forces, and if we are in feminine bodies, we create the thing that is most valuable on this planet. We create people. We also create whatever it is that we desire because we have wombs. And I'm asking, I want to have this discussion so that we can begin to contemplate it at a deeper level and step more into the innate power within it. And in doing so, find the spaces within us that, up till now, we can have compassion for our mothers. We can forgive ourselves for not knowing and not showing up in our natural power. We can forgive our mothers for not knowing and not showing up in their natural power. And as we begin to take it on intellectually, spiritually, and in our beingness, we begin to change the energy, and it literally changes everything, because now we aren't walking around with being miseducation and being misguided. It shifts everything. I remember the first time I realized, literally, and this wasn't long ago, maybe it was 5 or 6 years ago, when I realized that I still believed in the Eve story. I was still holding inside of me, like maybe I was 44 or so. And I thought, like, it came to me, I was like, how is it possible that I still believe that Eve came from the rib of a man? Like, do you guys know that story, that Bible story? And I mean, like, that was what I was taught as a child. I was taught that women existed because God took Adam's rib and made a woman from it. And one day when I was 44 years old, I thought, now that is a crock of shit. It took me all of those years to question it. And I remember talking to a friend of mine who's a Christian at the time, a male friend of mine, and I think he's still Christian. And I said to him, well, why don't I give you a rib and you give me a sperm, and let's see who can produce something? Because the creative process doesn't change. As it exists is how it's always existed. And so it's not possible that humanity started from God taking a rib from Adam. But that is how thick, how deep and intense the mythology is around this God as a man, minus the feminine. That a woman isn't even needed to create life. That's what that story says. That story says a woman isn't even necessary to create life. And so if we've been breathing in those ideas, and your mothers took those ideas in, like, it's like, how do you find a sense of self, a sense of worth, a sense of value, a sense of purpose when you are living a lie in your cell structure? I mean, it truly is a lie. And there's no evidence that supports it. But yet we've been walking around believing it like it's true. Isn't that amazing? So I just wanted to really get that in so that we can start considering, what are some of the things we believe that we might not question, that we've not really taken on as, that we've not challenged. And I'd love to have a conversation and check in and just see how everybody's doing. And, let's just be together tonight, because I feel like we've been taking a lot of information, and I want to start to distill some of it and integrate through conversation and dialogue with one another. So does anyone have anything they want to share? Anything they want to ask or talk about? Or
I love to share, Monique. Mm-hmm. I love the conversation that we're having around the feminine and how we've existed in history. Mm-hmm. And, there are some of us who are fighting for the fact that the feminine and the masculine are equal. Mm-hmm. And then there are some of us who are fighting to understand that the feminine and the masculine are complementary, and that mm-hmm. we're not equal and we're not the same, but we're complementary. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting to me, because when I look at our history around what, in our American history of femininity and being feminine, that it's almost as if it was forgotten that we are not wired the same. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because how you were saying that we are creators. What you put in the soil will be born. Mm-hmm. That aspect of the feminine has not been protected mm-hmm. for a long time. We are not the same in that point, because what you give us, what the masculine gives us, we are going to birth. Mm-hmm. And the fact that that aspect, it hasn't been protected in a way as a whole, mm-hmm. like to know that I need to preserve this part to not give it purity, but so that I can reap what it is that I want.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I do.
And it's so interesting when we think about, I can only go off my mother's history. I know a lot of women tell me their mom was a stay-at-home wife. She was treated like crap. She was beat up or stuff like that. Mm. That's not my experience. I don't know anything about that. I've heard about it. But my experience was my mother embodying the masculine for survival. Mm-hmm. So my perspective of what it is to be feminine and be a mother, and the mother that I want to be, and the perspective I had as a child of why I'm wounded, because expectation is what creates wounds. Mm-hmm. I had an expectation of what mama should have been, which is someone who protected that part of myself, that what I am fed, I'm going to create. Mm-hmm. And she was so busy working and being in her masculine force that she wasn't able to protect that part of me. So it makes me understand, like, as a mom, we cannot protect our children from everything, mm-hmm. but I at least want to teach my girls how to protect their creative force, mm-hmm. by knowing that we have to have boundaries, because we are that sensitive to the universe. We are soil itself. Mm-hmm. So if I put this in my soil, if I put this in my girl's soil, it's going to manifest. We have to be our own bodyguards on that. We have to be our spiritual guard around the psychic womb that we are. Mm-hmm. And that's just an interesting conversation to have about finding our mom, is that what about that aspect of things? And we're not masculine. Mm-hmm. The masculine can take on war. They can look at it. It does not affect them like it affects women.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they don't have to protect themselves in a certain sense. We do.
Right.
So that aspect, I think so much more balance would come apart if the entire collective understood that part of us. Because we all benefit from protecting it.
Yes. We do. And because we are creating the most valuable thing that there is, that we have on the planet. Sarah's saying, we need to be able to trust them to protect us.
We have to protect ourselves first.
Yeah, it's because it's reflective, right? So it is and that's why it's important for us to really begin to know who we are, like to know what it means to be a woman. And that's the thing that we can see, that our mothers and our grandmothers haven't known. They have absolutely had a deficit in their understanding of self. And when we can realize that, for me, it creates compassion. It makes me go, okay, she didn't know. I'm just learning.
Absolutely.
I'm just learning. So if she didn't know, I can't hold her responsible for something she didn't know. And then how do I get better? How do I begin to do this? And, there were times on this planet, like the earliest religions were mother religions, where they worshiped the mother goddess. We've heard that before, where it was all about worshiping the woman because she gave life. And there was a time when when it wasn't clear. You always knew who the mother was, but you might not have known who the father was. So, it was, so there was a time when it was just like, 9 months would come and this woman would produce a child. And I don't know that there was clarity always around like, oh, that child came because of a sex act, right? Like, I feel like there was a time when it just seemed like, oh my God, look at her belly's growing.
Right. Her belly's big now. She's
right. Right, exactly. And so at some point, there was a cognitive thing that started to realize that pregnancy came because of the act of sex. And so we're just in this place of, as our country and our world is shifting, and we're seeing how the patriarchy has become so hyper masculine, right? And I just want to say that I really appreciate some of the gifts of the patriarchy. We have industry and we have technology and we have so much that is a gift of this current system. And now, like Gabrielle, like you were saying, we are different. And so we need to have our differences acknowledged, where we're not all trying to be men, trying to live in our masculine, because that is, we are seeing that it's more and more difficult for women to get pregnant. Why? Because our bodies are running so hot, because we are not holding as much water and being able to create the experiences that we need in order to hold life. It's so things are starting to shift, but it's shifting because our consciousness is basically underdeveloped around the truth of who we are. And so I just really wanted to talk about that so we can get clear around the opportunity to start practicing forgiveness. That's ultimately what it is that I want for us to be able to do, to move into a practice of being with the power of forgiveness. And, as I was saying in our last time together, that it's time for us to start taking ideas, like what's coming, what can you do, what are the things you are willing to consider doing to heal yourself, the action that you would take. And I'm curious, has anybody gotten anything in the seeing phase that would show up for you as like, oh, well, this is something I'm considering. And I was saying before, one of the things that I did early on for me was I always look at the picture of my mother, blessed, love her. I always spend time every day praying to the Sacred Mother, praying for my grandmother, praying. And that is, I am the result of that. I've been doing that for so many years now that has changed my psyche and it's changing the way I relate to women and changing the way I relate to myself. So at some point, whether it be now or in a few weeks, we get an opportunity to take on what is it that we're willing to do for our little girl, the little girl in us who wasn't parented, or the little boy in us who wasn't parented. What are we willing to do for the purpose of healing and reconciling that aspect of ourselves? What are you willing to take on? And so today is the last day of the seeing phase, and tomorrow begins the leading phase. Beautiful. And so I am curious, how is this landing for you? So we are now 3 weeks in. We're 3 weeks in. We've been doing the work for 3 weeks now. We're in the last day of the third week. And so where are you with the pivot, with the turnaround? Why is that happening? I'm curious. With the turnaround, like where are you with the opportunity to see this in a new way, to be with this in a unique way? Who'd like to share?
I will.
Okay.
Unless somebody else wants to. I feel like I share a lot in this class, and I want to make sure other people are like thinking that. But, okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So the thing that keeps coming up for me is quiet and stillness. Mm-hmm. And I've been feeling kind of like I just started my period, and my PMS phase was kind of rough, and I've been feeling super depressed and bitter for the last several days. And I'm looking at where the bitterness is coming from. And I had an ex come into my life recently, back into my life, and that was really intense and really triggered a lot of old past stuff. and it was the guy I was with when I started having like tons of resentment towards my mom that I was mentioning the other night. It's been kind of mysterious for me to like figure out like why I started feeling that way. So I feel like there's some big cosmic tangle that's trying to like show itself and like trying to show me like, okay, here's the ball of yarn that needs to be untangled, like work on this. And so I don't know if it's because of I've been feeling kind of depressed, but I just keep getting that I need to be quiet and I need to be still, because and I've also, I mean, it's spring, almost summer, and I'm really trying to live my life more fully after feeling limited by illness for years, and I've been making new friends and like bringing more women into my life that I really want to connect with. And so it's like this sense of like bringing more activity and more people into my world, but also at the same time being really quiet and still within that. So that feels like a pretty cool balance. It feels good, and it always feels really, really good when I can let myself have that quiet and stillness, but I usually don't do a very good job with it because I get excited and want to like talk and like tell people stuff, and anyways, that's what I've been noticing. But it's like a definitely like I'm seeing the bitterness, and I'm seeing how my mom became really bitter, and I'm seeing that the feminine way is more yin and like the more quiet kind of stillness and openness. And I'm just sort of like looking at the two and trying to figure out like, okay, what's happening? What is there too much of, and where can I like replace that energy with this new energy? And yeah, that's kind of where I am. It feels very murky, but I trust that it's sort of a bigger process that's going to keep unfolding.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And it is a bigger process that will keep unfolding. And you just stay with it and be gentle with it, you know? I mean, one of the things that I'd like to do always is I just sort of witness and watch. And then I notice when I can't be still, because sometimes the stillness totally terrifies me. Like it's because I feel like I'm going to get lost in it, or like it's going to annihilate me. And so sometimes I can practice it for just short moments, and then I release it and come back to it. And so I really honor that. So thank you, Sarah. Sabrina.
Holly, is that you with those beautiful birds chirping? Oh my God.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I can mute.
Beautiful.
They are beautiful. Yeah.
I was wondering. I wonder I should unmute me. I'd like to share a little.
Please, I love to hear from you.
I know I told you I'm in Seattle. I'm at my mom's house. I'm in my old bedroom that I had when I was a teenager. I painted the dining room today with my sister. They're all downstairs waiting for me to have a dinner with them later. We went to my uncle's funeral yesterday. Oh, and this morning I did listen to the last lecture, and I really appreciate what you shared with the Hawkins work, Gabriel. That was really, really good. I was more, but I'm just, I'm really just seeing and feeling, as I've been with Juju Mama for a while too, this work that now you're offering, Monique, is just, I really am vibing with all you're saying about our consciousness. Like what do we know? Like to get still is scary for me sometimes, because what will come up, and will I have the courage to really take what's coming up and open it? And, you know, to be in these groups and to try to get the information that I can from people that are exploring. And I really just am so grateful and thankful, because I just know that we could just keep going deeper and deeper into this ocean of knowledge to create this new world. And I don't even know, it feels so powerful. And I feel like a guppy in the world of really what I know. But it's in us. That primordialness is in us all. Like it's coming. And I think we need the village to hold each other, because it's like we could be burned at the stake if we don't have each other, you know. So I'm seeing it as things come more clear, and I continue to do practices and work on it, and even joining you now and hearing what you have to say, I'm like, yeah, I feel that. And uncovering more of the mystery to be peaceful and have more of this feminine energy or more balance in our world, really on everything. And it's so interesting in the culture that I live in. The Salvation Armies hardly take anything anymore. There's just so much stuff. We're just getting overloaded. And my mother, it's like the hoarding, and just a lot of stuff is coming to me. It's hard for me to even process really all that's coming to me. I can only take in so much, but yeah, lots happening while I'm here in my mom's house. They're looking at moving it. They've had this house for 40 years.
Wow.
40 years. I moved into this house when I was 4.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm feeling, woo, this is good work. That's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. It's been so lovely having you here. Like when you sent me the email saying that you were at your mother's, she called and asked for help. One of the things that I'm very aware of, and a lot of you have sent me private messages sharing about things that are starting to happen or ways you're starting to feel. And all it takes is just for a new consideration. Like Gabrielle said on the last call, who do I get to be because of my mother? Like, because of her life, who do I get to be? Right. And it's such a great question. And, for me, I'm like, oh, I get to be a teacher because of her, I get to be a teacher, and I get to be a student of life, and I get to be a forgiving woman. I get to be a creator, all that because of my mother. And so I just thank you, Holly. I thank you for being here, and I thank you for allowing the magic to come, that would take you to your mother, to be with her in this time of your life and in the time of her life. And sort of, if you guys are talking about selling her house, that means like really closing a chapter of your life.
I'm watching my mom go through her tantrums, and it's like I'm really having to mother her some moments and create new boundaries. And it's like, oh, this is happening because I'm the oldest out of 3 girls, and quite a bit old, like decade older than my sisters. And it's like, oh, here I am. But it's where I'm supposed to be, along with being in this course and just kind of gathering the information to kind of get held and clear. So it's just important stuff. It's important.
Yeah, it is. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to share?
I'll share.
Okay.
Excuse me, I have a cold, so I'm a little nasally.
Okay.
But in thinking about what Gabriella was saying about who do we get to be because of our mothers, I know the last time I shared about how I was like so inspired by Ricky's class talking about the astrological influences and how my mother has the Scorpio moon. And so I've really been like thinking about that and my intensity. And one thing that I've noticed that it like gets on my nerves, but something that I also love about my mom is that she just knows, like she knows things without like knowing all the details. And I realized that I have that same gift. And when I stop like thinking about it, stop trying to intellectualize it and just like trust my gut, things just happen. And as opposed to like trying to figure out like, okay, like what's going on like in my mind, it's just like, it feels good to like trust and to be able to like flow with the energy because I was kind of already expecting it. So I get to go to plan B and it's coming in like different ways that, I don't have any children, but I got this substitute teaching gig and I never taught a day in my life, and so I'm working with different students and it's just and being in tune with them every day. I'm starting to just have like a mothering instinct, and so it's just certain things that I know that's gonna happen throughout the day, and then they happen. And like today, like all the teachers were out, they were supposed to be going on a field trip, And I knew that they weren't going on the field trip. No one told me this. No one communicated. And I didn't have a lesson plan. I didn't know what was going to go on. And everyone was freaking out when I got there. And when I got there, it was just like the trip wasn't going, but I was able to go with the energy. And it's just to kind of see, one of the kids said, you know, Miss Jordan, like, you really care. Like, I see that you really, like, care about us, and, like, you're just really in tune with us in a different way. And it just kind of meant a lot, because I feel like in doing this work with my mom, it changes my relationship with working with children. And I've always regarded children how I felt I was being regarded as a child, that I'm annoying, I'm worrisome, I'm in the way. And so as I'm changing my perspective with my mom, I'm noticing it's changing my relationships, not just with other women, but just in how I mother people in different situations. Even my brother, who a lot of hurt with him molesting me as a kid, and my mother blaming me for it. Today we went to go visit my grandmother for her birthday, and it's just like, I check in with myself all the time, like, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And I'm doing great. Like, I feel like I'm getting to a place of forgiveness, and I'm noticing that my mother and his relationship is kind of shifting in a way too. And so it just seems really magical, and I'm just really grateful for this class and to actually be doing the work. And yeah, so that's all I want to say.
Thank you so much. I love that. I mean, there's something, see, that's the thing. It's like, for you to be able to notice, like, oh, as I'm healing this relationship with my mother, it's assisting me in being able to be more maternal and compassionate with children, because it's healing your own identity as a child. So now you can hold children in the way you would have wanted to be held. You would have wanted to be seen, right? Isn't that profound?
Absolutely.
And they can feel that, and the children can feel that, just like you could feel as a child that, you know, maybe people thought you were in the way. These children can feel that you actually are excited by them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's, when we're children, we're so alert. We can feel, you know, like you have the knowing, right? You have a knowing as a child. And so I also hear you saying you're going to get back to that. Like, your mother has an inner knowing, and that Scorpio moon definitely does. And that Scorpio just knows. Scorpio just knows, like, everything. So it's good for you to be able to see that in her, and to see it from a neutral place, right? And as you see it from a neutral place in her, it grows inside of you. So it's a very powerful thing. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is really wonderful. So thank you so much, Megan. And I hope that when you're able to get a reading with Ricky, because you'll love it. I'm a good astrologer, but he's a great astrologer. He is, like, he's been studying for 20 years, so he's great. So I totally recommend that. So thank you for that. So, okay. So before, Gabrielle, were you going to share anything? I know you got your baby in your arms now.
I was.
Okay.
It'll come back.
Okay, great. So before we go, because it looks like we'll be able, since there are only 4 of us today, we'll be able to end at our scheduled time, which is 8:00. Even though I always am willing to go over to 8:30, it's fine. But I wanted to talk about this leading phase, right? And I want us to really consider, you know, what I've said here. True healing asks that we are willing to take full responsibility for our feelings, our thoughts, and our lives. At some point, we will find that our power, freedom, and ability to love rest in understanding that we create our lives with our perception. And so if you can move into that space, then you can begin to ask yourself, you know, what is the one thing that I'm willing to do for myself, for the little person inside of me, on a regular basis, that will begin to transform me in a new way around the story that I have with my mother? What is the one thing? So for the next few days, you get to think about that. And here's the thing. Get really specific about what your little girl or boy wants and needs to feel loved, healed, and joyful. I know sometimes I will say, I ice cream. I just do. I just do. Like, because when I was a little girl, like I have this story from when I was a little girl. I'll tell it. It's sad, but I don't like. It's not sad anymore. When I was a little girl, I wanted a Schwinn bike. I don't know if you guys remember those cruiser bikes. And I wanted a Schwinn bike, and I wanted it red and red spokes and red tires. Like it was just all decked out. It was probably a bike that would have costed at the time, it was probably going to be about $300. And I really, really, really wanted it. And I told everybody in my life that I wanted it. And on Christmas Day, I expected that I was going to get it because I had been talking about it for about a year. And I did not get the bike. Nobody got the bike from me. It was really, really devastating. And so, but what that taught me about myself was that, I have needs and desires, and if no one else can fulfill my needs and desires, am I going to abandon myself? And are they going to just not get fulfilled because no one else is doing it? And so that's why I'm saying here, you have to get really specific about what your little girl or little boy wants and needs in order to feel loved, healed, and joyful. And what I have learned for me is that I really need to feel like a person understands me and gets me. And if I can't get that from somebody else, I have to give that to myself. And then, what is the one or few things you can do to definitely bring about change? And that might be that you are, you're going to call your mother once a month and say hello to her, or send her flowers once a month, or send yourself flowers once a month. You're a little girl, that you're going to do something to really encourage, inspire, and begin to create a new energetic feeling around your experience as a little girl. You're going to begin to reparent yourself. And it's important that we take that on for ourselves, because as you begin reparenting yourself, it'll begin to shift those energies and those experiences. And before you know it, the conversation that you have around your mother, or who she was or who she wasn't, will begin to dissipate, because you'll begin to start getting the things that you always needed, because you give them to yourself. And as we give them to ourselves, you'll find that people will start to show up and give it to you. It just becomes this thing that feeds on itself. Look at Gabrielle's baby. She's so pretty. And so the last thing, really quickly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the woman of Willendorf and the Venus of Willendorf, and just to really bring us back to this idea and experience that there was a time when the only religion on the planet was that of worshiping the goddess and the mother, because it was absolutely known that this is where all life was created. And so that energy, that belief that from the very beginning of time, it lives inside of us. And all we need to do is activate it. Remember who you are. Look at your body, touch your body, tell yourself that you are the creative vortex of the universe, that you are the place where heaven and earth meet, and you manifest your life. You manifest material things. You manifest this material world, that you yourself hold within you the DNA of the Great Mother. That is yours. It is your birthright. And so with that, unless anybody else has anything else they want to share or want to ask.
It's so interesting, Monique, as you brought this up, and I have the Great Cosmic Mother and the Triple Goddess. Those are really great books about the feminine. It really just dropped in that we are living in a time where force is revered. At this time of the women of Willendorf, we were living in a time where power was revered. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's like to live in the opposite of that is totally a unicorn in this time. Because everything about our cycle is power and force. So it brings me a level of empowerment and peace to know that we're living in a cycle of revering power and force individually. And right now we're just in a time of force. But I get to choose.
Right.
Do I want to operate from force or power?
Right.
Do I want to have more balance in how I operate with the two? Because I own them both. You know, but that's kind of how the seeing phase was for me, is that, you know, wow, you get to choose. You get to pay attention to what is force, what is power, what is feminine, what is masculine, what feels best for you. Now take action on that.
Right.
With the leading phase. You know. So that's my last share for the evening.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really do. I find in my life personally right now, I'm being given an opportunity every day to be in my power. Every day. Every day I have an inner conversation with Spirit where Spirit says, sit still. Like Sabrina was saying, be still. And as I can surrender into that stillness, sometimes it's just for seconds. Like, it really does scare me, Holly. Like I was saying, like, the stillness scares me because force is what I'm used to, and power requires being still.
And trust.
So, that's right. And trust. And so when I can do it, almost within hours, something will manifest. Something will show up because I was able to sit still. Something that I needed will show up without me having taken any action at all, except inaction, to be still. And so that is the feminine. That is it right there.
Yes.
Okay, my ladies. So I just want to bless us and trust and know that we are held in the power of the divine feminine, and that we are protected in the power of the divine masculine. And that the two of those together are in service to one another. They are different, and the power that they bring serves the creative force of the universe. And for that, I am grateful. I let it be, and I say, and so it is. Amen. Ashe and amen. Okay, ladies. So I'm so grateful. So we'll be back in our private group. And if you have any questions, I'm here, and I appreciate you all so much. And you're so beautiful. I know, Megan, I can't see you, but I know you're beautiful. And Sabrina, you're beautiful. And Holly, you're gorgeous. And Gabrielle. And that baby, look at that baby. So cute. So
thank you, Monique.
You're welcome.
This work, Goddess Woman. Oh my God.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to offer it.
A recharge for real.
Yes, thank you. Definitely a recharge. Nice to see you all.
Thank you. Nice to see you too. All right, ladies. Have a wonderful. Bye-bye. Stop recording.